Hello everybody, and welcome back to Perfect Films. Now, I know the last few episodes have all been personal favorite films of mine, and films that I chose to do first in order to make a statement and to try to begin on a non-serious note. And I also chose to do the first few films in the series in order to get some kind of editing prowess down. By that, I mean I learned how to butcher film footage in DaVinci Resolve. But this is one of the first episodes where I might actually not be alone in my thinking on this film being perfect. Today we were talking about the story of a titan of industry whose selfishness and greed broke apart the entirety of his life. His is a story that has been told 1,000 times and in 1,000 mediums, but what makes today's film so special cannot be narrowed down to one or two things. Everything about the film is perfect. The film was made almost 100 years ago, but can still be found as relevant as if it were released today. The making of today's film is legendary. 2 films have already been made about the making of this film, and it not only launched one of the most important figures in filmmaking ever, but there is no way that I could ever do justice to the film that made me want to be in the film industry. Watching the film unspoiled on the big screen, in fact, in my intro to cinema class, was nothing less than a religious experience. So today, in order to pay homage to one of the best films ever made, we are diving into what makes Citizen Kane such a great film. Let's start with the opening of the film. It opens on the abandoned Playboy mansion of the title character. His enormous zoo, once filled with all the world's animals, is now rusted and barren of all life. And then as we all witness the classic opening where Charles Foster Kane utters his final words, we see my favorite part of the film, and the first reason of what I consider to make the film so good. We get the news on the march segment, which, in essence, spoils the entirety of the film for us. It breaks show don't tell, but it gives a diegetic reason for it. It flat out tells the audience exactly what's going to happen. However, in this case it works, because it's a newsreel on a famous figure. I've personally written articles in the same way that this newsreel set up. It's something the audience can get behind, and it's simultaneously showing and telling us what's going to happen. It's a brilliant little narrative tool, and it gets us to care about the character of Charles Foster Kane by showing us his life, and the most crucial part of the film to work is to get us to give a fuck about Charles Foster Kane. Without that, the audience won't like the movie. So the news on the march segment, after showing us his death, gets us to root for him, even though we already know how much of a shitbag he is. It addresses the audience and tells us that, number one, he's a liar, he's a cheat and a newspaper magnate who once owned the world and lost it all. But 2, it tells us exactly what's going to happen. It gets us to care about what is going to happen. Without the news on the march segment, the film is dead in the water. Without it, the film is just about a spoiled rich kid who doesn't get to play with his toys anymore. It's one of the most important things about the film, and it's the only film where it could work. A newsreel about a failed newspaper magnate is ironic in every sense of the word. It's poetic is what it is. And then we get to the first real scene of the film after we get the news on the march segment. The room full of journalists who tell the protagonist to find out what he can about the last words of the man, Rosebud. This scene exemplifies one of the aspects often pointed out about the film: the camera work. The cinematographer for the film was an Oscar-winning cinematographer who sought out to work for someone who wanted to buck the rules by not knowing the rules. Orson Welles was a first-time director, and he brought an out-of-the-box style to the camera work, which combined his audio storytelling in his radio dramas, expertise of Greg Tolan behind the camera. These two individualized the film totally. The best way to put it is as BBC Culture said: Citizen Kane is an encyclopedia of techniques, a 114-minute film school which provides lesson after lesson in deep focus, rear projection, extreme close-ups, and overlapping dialogue. The reason it's so vibrant is that its own director was learning those lessons too. Then we get to the main drag of the film. Following the reporter going to different people in Kane's life, which creates a unique story to be told in the way that it is. We only get information from second or third hand sources, and these sources are also the same people who Kane fucked over in his life. So by showing us just how Kane lost everyone in his life, it tells us how much of a bitter man he was. In all honesty, there is so much to talk about with this film. I could talk for hours about it. But for the sake of time and for the sake of not spoiling the movie for anybody who hasn't already had it spoiled, I'm gonna wrap up. If you haven't seen it, you have to. There's no questions about it. It's a rite of passage, not only as an American, but as anyone who appreciates film. It's a warning to not become Ozymandias. You see the same kind of story being told in Watchmen, same kind of story being told with Walter White in Breaking Bad, or Better Call Saul. You could see it with Omar in The Wire. You could see it with Avon Barksdale in The Wire. It's a beautiful film that I can't overstate how good it is. If you haven't seen it, go ahead and watch it. That's it. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and try and have a nice day.